Hey, I'm your host, the Dr. Danko, come on in. You've been missing out, so let's begin. Pumpkin_crumb is your host here too. When you hear the beat, you know what to do. Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me now? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Hey. Good evening and welcome to Why Did Not You Warn Me? I'm your host, Matthew, the Dr. Danko.
I'm Hillary Crum, the co-host.
Awesome. So we haven't been podcasting in a long time, mainly just because of our jobs and the timing and everything, and I work a lot on weekends, so I don't get home until real late. Is that music?
No. Yes, it's music.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing it through the headphones, so
yes,
it's a second layer. All right. So ignore that.
Yeah, so you've been working. I was sick.
Mm-hmm.
I work with kids. I'm always going to be sick.
Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't get sick. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
But
stomach bug is gross.
But we're back, so...
Yes, here we are. This is probably going to be like... I know we were pretty faithful about doing it every Thursday, and it was great, but life gets in the way, so we'll do it when we can.
Life moves pretty fast. Just if you don't stop and
in August already.
Take a second to look around. Ferris Bueller quote. It's fine. I know. I noticed the way you were just like, yeah, I agree with that. Instead of rolling your eyes as you normally do.
I don't understand references.
You don't have to. I understand enough of them for both of us.
True.
But anyways, we'll jump right into it. What
Sure.
have you been doing? Reading, watching, all of it. How do we do this show again?
I don't remember. I've been reading another Montessori book. This one by Maria Montessori herself. And I'm hoping that, stuff got lost in translation because she originally wrote in Italian in the mid to late 1800s. But the tone is really bugging me. She just seems really condescending and smug.
Yeah, that's what you were telling me.
Yeah, she's also very Catholic, which I knew, but it's more obvious.
We don't own that song.
Yeah,
it's not our fault.
We're not trying to profit off of it. I can't even hear it fully.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so...
I mean, I get the idea, not so much that she's being smug, but, like, when she creates a teaching method and it's based, like, it's called by her last name, Montessori, like, you feel like, okay, I know what I'm talking about a little bit, but the way you've made it sound like she seems like she's the almighty...
I mean, the book is called The Secret of Childhood. So
right, like she's unlocked everything. She
knows. And they tell you, right? Like in the first chapter. I don't remember because it was scientific and annoying. But yeah. I mean, basically what it boils down to is that the child's entire, like, developmental makeup is within them, and that nothing that parents or teachers do
matters.
Is going to have an impact on that in any way. You just have to make sure the kid has access to what they need to be able to go on that journey.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really have a lot of use for imagination before the age of like 9 or 10, because she thinks that the brain isn't fully developed yet to be able to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I have kids on the playground telling me that they're superheroes fighting bad guys, and like it's not just that they saw a Marvel movie because they're two,
or a Batman movie.
Gross. I noticed you didn't say or a DC.
I know.
Because
we'll get to that later, but
yeah, I mean, it's, kids come up with crazy shit. And also, it just sort of sounds very Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in that you have to have this before you're able to do this. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, okay. I love The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. And one of the themes in that book is tearing apart Maslow's hierarchy, because that sort of operates under the assumption that people who are chronically ill can't make art because they haven't achieved the bottom level of the pyramid, which is physical well-being. So because they are not comfortable in that, they cannot go up the pyramid, which is bullshit, obviously. Right. Yeah, and similarly, you know, just because a child doesn't understand, like, some basic building blocks of reality, it doesn't mean they don't have the capacity for imagination.
Right.
I don't know. Her tone just really bugs me.
Luckily, she's not the only one who's written a child book or come up with a learning method for children.
Right. It's just kind of disappointing because this is a theory that I've staked a lot on.
Yeah, but it sounds like parts of it are good.
Yeah.
And the way, you know, teachers or schools teach Montessori is that they adapt their, you know, beliefs or opinions on how children should be taught using the Montessori method as sort of like a guideline.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, reading books by people who have known her or have worked with her. Yeah. She very much wanted it to be like that. Her theories were just supposed to be a framework. Right. Yeah, so I mean, I'm hoping that it's just like having been translated from Italian from a woman who had these thoughts like over 100 years ago. Right. And, you know, the theories are still very interesting. She is a scientist. She was a doctor at a time when women were not doctors. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. And even my Montessori preschool teacher, who is just a goddess among women, a god among people, she told me straight up that she did not do full Montessori. She sort of tailored it to what she liked, because I remember doing a lot of imaginative work in that classroom. Yeah. Because I've always been a fairly imaginative child. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I'm reading that. I also started reading another Jodi Picoult book that I've read before, but I won't get into that until I'm further into it. It's about elephants. Oh. It's called Leaving Time. We'll probably talk about that whenever the next time as we do this. I also started watching This Is Us. And I might wait until I finish season 1, which I'm very close, but it's an interesting show. It's very sad. It's heavy all the time.
So like my mom has been telling us about the show. Yeah. And not asking, but telling you specifically that you would like it. Because my parents, they just, once they get it onto a show, they like, not binge watch it like we do.
But they watch that pretty exclusively.
They watch it exclusively, or they have like a lineup of shows they watch. Right. And then they just finish it out until there's no more episodes left. And This Is Us, the biggest draw for you that my mom specifically would know.
It's Jess from Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, and he's awesome. He's great. I have sat in on a few episodes that you've had on. Yeah. And the one in particular that we watched last night that you wanted me to watch.
I did want you to watch. And you know why I wanted you to watch it.
Totally. It was definitely a good episode. It's called
The Big Day.
The Big Day, where the main character, played by Mandy Moore. It's hard to say main character, but...
Well, they also jump around in time a lot more than they did during that episode. Right. They did almost not at all during that episode.
Yeah. The way the show is structured, there's like a time jump from the past and the present, revolving around this one family.
A lot of different stages in between. Yeah. And like the kids at multiple different ages. And
yeah, and I'm sure if you watch it in order, it makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where like the story isn't linear, but every time you get something new, you're also sort of simultaneously having the background of it built. Yeah. So that by the time you get to the punchline of what's currently happening, you get the background punchline as well. Yeah. So it all just comes together really, really nicely.
I do think it is told very well, and it is an interesting show, especially because, I mean, it's not a sitcom, it's a drama comedy.
A dramedy.
Yeah, a dramedy.
It's tragic.
It's very tragic.
What it is.
But it's like there are definitely shows that exist in the same genre, but the way it's told and even the way it's acted, it's pretty unique. And yeah, Jess from Gilmore Girls is the father,
and Mandy
Moore is the mother. And I didn't think it would work, but it does. Their
relationship works. They have pretty good chemistry. Yeah, I mean, Jess is still Jess, just like older and with a really bad mustache.
But it's the 70s. We're on the brink of the 80s.
And it goes
all over the place.
We go everywhere in time, far back into the 60s, and it's obvious with the costuming and with the world, which is pretty cool.
Which I guess is how they help tell simultaneous stories is just in set design.
Well, and the very cool thing about the first episode is that I did not know we were jumping around in time until the very end.
Oh, really?
So in the first episode, you have Jess and Mandy Moore, and Mandy Moore is pregnant with triplets, and then we also have 3 adults, 2 of whom we know to be twins, and 1 who doesn't seem to be related to them at all. And they're telling all of these stories concurrently, and you hear that the one who doesn't seem to be related is trying to find his birth father who left him at a fire station.
Yeah.
And the 2 that are twins are talking about their brother. So then you figure out that all 3 of them are triplets. You're like, so maybe the show just has something to do with triplets? And then, at the very, the last scene, it just pulls it all together when Jess is looking at his 2 babies, and the scene with the cop who's looking at the baby in the nursery, who's like, someone just dropped him at a fire station. It was the strangest thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god!
That's pretty cool.
That's what's happening!
Yeah.
So that was it. The structure is probably what I find the most compelling.
Yeah.
A lot of the story kind of bugs me. The male characters, minus Jess, are pretty exhausting.
But
it's clearly written by men.
But is it, even if it might be written by men, is the time does it take time? Okay,
the guys that are exhausting. I mean, you saw some of the guys in the past, but it doesn't even matter because Jess is so perfect.
Yeah, and I even I thought his mustache was ridiculous the first time I saw it, and then I was like, it grows on you, it's growing on him, as you had said, which ruined it. But no, he's a very good actor. I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff.
I've literally only seen him in Gilmore Girls before this. But yeah, one of the triplets, Kate, present day as an adult, she has this boyfriend who's supposed to just be charming and awesome, and everything he does annoys the shit out of me, and he just so clearly has no respect for her as a person, but she keeps being like, oh, you're right, and I love you, and I'm texting my best friend in just frustration,
well, maybe
why?
I mean, you're still on season 1.
Yeah,
maybe there's something that happens in future episodes. I don't know. You can tell he's not written
to be a bad boyfriend. He's supposed to be just, this guy that she was lucky enough to find. He just loves her, and he does everything for her. And why can't she just get her shit together? And I'm like, because every time she says she wants something a certain way, he's like, but what about me?
Yeah.
And then she caves, and it's okay, and she's so happy that she did. And I'm like, that's not real.
Yeah, I've seen that trope a lot.
Yeah, and it's
that's frustrating.
And it's I understand the vast appeal of this show, because when it came out, there were a lot of people posting about it and watching it. It's a very typical kind of story.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing about the actual plot is typical, but the way the characters interact with each other.
Yeah.
And I think I was either telling you this or telling Devin, but after watching something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine pretty consistently, where all of those tropes are just turned on their head as often and as enthusiastically as possible, it's kind of sad to have to go back.
I know.
But that being said, I'm not done watching the show.
Right.
So.
There's at least something that's making you want to keep watching it.
I just cry a lot.
Yeah, it's super sad.
Super sad. So anyway, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
What about you? What have you been reading, watching, listening to?
Well, I didn't want to jump into this first, but now I'm forgetting what I did actually watch. Oh, okay. No, I got it. It's coming back to me. I watched the pilot episode of a show called Hollyweed, which is...
A bug just went down my shirt. It's fine.
It's very distracting. a show called Hollyweed, which is directed, written, and acted. Obviously, was the big draw for me.
Right.
But it was described as Clerks, but in a weed store.
You were like, okay.
And I was like, all right, I love Clerks. And so what the show actually is this one dude, and it takes place in somewhere in California. Well, actually, Hollywood, because that's where the name comes from.
That's the joke.
I knew it was the joke, but
No.
they don't actually say where they are.
No.
But I guess it makes sense that it would be in Hollywood. One dude owns this weed shop where he sells recreational weed. And then Kevin Smith also works at the store. And actually, he plants. They have all the plants in the back room. And he's come up with this really good strain called Hollyweed, because it's like a marketing gimmick, because it's in Hollywood. And then they do this other thing with like weekend stoners, or posers as they call them, that don't really know what they're looking for and are just like, everyone's talking about weed and like, I want to try it and
so
stuff like that.
So like we were that time we went to the weed store.
Right. No, but they're more like,
we'll take the one that's Parks and Rec.
No, that sort of, but like people that want to belong to the culture, that in appearance only, that don't actually, like, not just to get high, but to be like, I smoke weed and things like that. So they get their like worst weed and tell them it's the best, and then it keeps them coming back for some reason. They call it dickweed.
Did you see the episode of Degrassi where they thought they were taking E, but it was just like aspirin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of shows like that.
Right.
Nutmeg apparently is supposed to get you high too. I don't know, but like weird shit like that. But there are a lot of Smodco people that show up in the show. Yes,
if you will.
Like Ralph Garman, who does Hollywood Babylon, and
he made my GPS.
No, he didn't. That's a lie. And Jason Mewes shows up in a brief shot, and also Adam Brody shows
your
up
man crush.
as a character. He's a real dick, but he plays it so well. No, like, he's meant to be this like Hollywood producer type, and he has Bluetooth in each ear, and he's always on the phone talking. And he's like, "Can you believe this guy is being a dick in my own house and shit like that?" And like going back and forth.
So he's not
he
just
plays
Dave
it so well.
Rakowski.
No, I like him when he plays the dick character. He's very good at it, and like,
was he the dick on the OC?
no.
Oh,
he's a teenager. They were all like
a teenage male.
yeah.
All men are
Chad Michael
secretly
Murray was on that
monsters.
show, so he wasn't the lead dick.
Right, Chad Michael Murray is always the focus of your ire.
He has
Got
dead eyes.
That is not a reference. That's just something Matt says a lot.
Yeah, but it is a reference.
Oh my god.
It's true, and it's a
He's giving
reference.
you so much credit.
Don't get me started on Chad Michael Murray.
I am sorry it came up.
Too late.
Sorry
I'm
you
already
brought it
started.
up.
He has dead eyes. No, but so in the show, Adam Brody's character shows up, and they're gonna give him dickweed because he is a dickweed in the show.
Sure.
But he gives him a bunch of money while Kevin Smith is going back to get the weed, and he fucks off, and then is like, he gave us more money to deliver it. And he's like, we're not like a delivery service. He's like, for this much money you are. So Kevin Smith has to go and deliver the weed.
Okay.
And he shows up to Adam Brody's house or whatever, and it ends up being a porn set.
Dave Rakowski does porn now.
He does, well, he produces it or directs it. I'm not sure. But Kevin Smith is delivering the weed, and he's like so taken aback by everything that's happening. And he starts talking to like the girl that's like the shoot.
Is she naked?
No, but she does think he's like the doctor coming in to like do a physical before they shoot, just to make sure she's healthy and everything. Don't do that. But nice.
Thank you.
Obviously it turns out he isn't the doctor, but she like flashes him accidentally and all this other stuff. But he starts like getting to know her, and she's smoking the Hollyweed that he's made, and he's like, you should be doing something else, like this isn't, but like she's not super into it. It's her birthday and she has to do this stuff that she doesn't really want to do, and like apparently the more you do certain things on a porn set, the more or the less money you make for it. So if you do it the one time, that's the highest you get for it, and then every time after that it goes down in price. And he's finding all this out from her, and he's like just talking to her like, it's your birthday, like you should have a cake or something, like
without like a penis in it,
basically. Yeah. And she ends up like leaving the set, and like Kevin Smith's like having a conversation with her, having dinner or like a cake or something, and then somehow gets her a job at the weed store, being like Hollyweed made her change her life and do something good for herself, because like the conversations actually play a lot better. I'm missing information.
I did not, you warned me.
Yes. But then the next day they show up to open the weed store and everything is gone, including the cash in the register, because she robbed them. But she leaves a nice note about how he did actually change her life.
Made her into a criminal.
Like, you were the only one that never tried to fuck me. I'm sorry that I fucked you, though. And like Kevin Smith's reading it, and there's this cheesy voiceover like as her reading it, and he's like, well, I mean, she didn't take the weed, but it did make her change her life. And like that's the whole pilot. And it's really strange for a number of reasons, but so it is very much like Clerks in a weed store. And in the original version of Clerks, Kevin Smith was going to be the Randall character, one of the guys that work at the convenience stores hooked up to a video rental store.
Okay.
So he was going to be in the video store, and he would come over to Dante and they would talk. But he wrote all this great dialogue for Randall, and then realized he can't memorize all that on set, so he cast somebody else to play him and gave himself the Silent Bob role that doesn't have to remember any lines.
Smart.
So there are a lot of parallels to that, where you finally get to see Kevin Smith in the Randall role, sort of.
Okay.
And in a new kind of convenience store, because weed stores are a dime a dozen in California. But it's strange the way... I love the dialogue, but it's those times in movies where they like are doing one joke and it just keeps going because it's like they're doing multiple takes of that joke. Okay. And they don't cut it after the first time. They just let it run on a little too long. You know what I mean? Like, they do it in Deadpool, but it actually plays a lot better in Deadpool. Okay. Like the conversation he has about what his face looks like. They do like a few different versions of how his face looks.
Oh, but then instead of cutting it after like one of those, they do like four. Okay.
But it actually works in Deadpool.
Right.
Whereas in other movies, they let it go on way too long.
And you're just like, why are we still suffering through
one
this?
joke is like still going, but it's not so like they kind of have a weird medium where they don't go on forever, but the joke's kind of
enough that it's intentional. Well, I mean, I'm sure it is intentional. But it's not long. It's not long enough to be funny.
Yeah, it's not like a long take that knows it's a long take,
right,
trying to be funny.
Like Deadpool is self-aware.
Yeah, it's kind of somewhere in between those two,
awkward.
And it's a little awkward. Luckily, the dialogue is strong enough in all the other scenes, and like I said, Adam Brody's character is great. Jason Mewes actually plays like this homeless dude that was behind the store, and his part's really funny. I don't really like the other dude like that owns the store.
Okay.
And Ralph Garman's character is funny as well. But it's a pilot. It was free. And the whole point of it, because it's been a project Kevin Smith has wanted to do for a little while, is the budget was low. They got a lot of people that they already knew and worked with before, so it was really easy to shoot. And he puts the free pilot out there for everyone to watch, so that if people do like it, they like sort of crowdfund it to see if it gets more episodes.
Okay.
And also, they shot a lot of it before Kevin Smith lost the weight. So then when they finish the episode, there's a scene like, did you lose weight or something? And it's like, yeah, like 40 pounds. It's amazing. And it's like, he looks completely different.
That's hilarious.
It's not a bad show. It's so weird
Yeah, you were texting me and you were like, you think it's the weirdest thing Kevin Smith has ever done.
I do, and I know Tusk is like probably up there, but
the bar's pretty high.
But Tusk itself is just such a creative movie and like well written.
You can't even see Tusk for how weird it is.
Yeah, like
right, you're blinded to
right,
it.
but it's a weird concept. But it's interesting, and it's
so fast. It's so cool.
They
came up with it on a podcast, and they just made it. I know, hon. We all know.
No, I know. Everyone knows because that's the exact thing I jumped through. But yeah, Tusk, like it's weird, but it's unique and something for like the horror genre that it is.
I really thought you were going to say something for everybody, and I was going to be like, I don't think
it is.
Stop it.
No.
Stop.
I'm obviously the main plot of it.
A man fucking somebody he's sewn into a walrus suit.
Doesn't fuck him.
Oh, that was the point.
No, the point is...
Okay, a man who sews somebody inside a walrus suit, right, to be his walrus companion or whatever.
Yes.
Right.
But, looking aside from that...
aside from the main premise of the movie...
if you take that weird component, if you just accept that as normal... Just stay with me.
Much.
If you just accept it as normal, the way the story is told and the way it's acted, it's actually amazing. Like if I cut that part out of the movie, it would play like it's just conversation. It's a lot of people, the movies they create on the podcast to show up, including, well, not on their podcast, but on one of my past podcasts, the My Jurassic World sequel that was not so far off, other than the fact that they haven't gone to space yet. I do think Jurassic Mars is somewhere in the future. But
so you can put away your Kevin Smith boner for the moment.
Anyways, so Hollywood was weird.
Hollyweed was weird. You just said Hollywood.
Hollyweed was weird.
Hollyweed was weird.
Was weird. But I am curious to see more episodes of it. I think if it had more episodes and started finding itself, like when we first watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
right,
it was just like a one-off cop show. Like every episode was different, but then they got a plot, and then aggressively, and like a super plot,
like witness protection.
Yeah, but then when we go back and watch it, knowing like where it comes to, like it's almost like those episodes could exist in between the future episodes. Like obviously they grow over time, episodes. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you mentioned this. We should do a Brooklyn Nine-Nine podcast.
We should. Like, I'm surprised we didn't start one.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was one that exists by now.
We've seen it so many times. We're almost finished again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But because I'm listening to that Red Dwarf podcast, they go episode by episode. And, the length of the episode, why did not you warn me? Bleep, blorp, zeep.
Yeah, we could probably do 2 episodes per podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like...
I was getting back on track.
Sorry. Yeah, sometimes I need that. But yeah, we would be able to talk about it and like go on for a long time.
Just gush forever, because really that's all we ever want to be doing.
I don't even think we need to do 2 episodes per podcast. I think 1 episode would be enough for half the podcast, and the other half would be...
just talk about it?
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe.
I don't know.
We can't even keep up with this podcast,
right,
so let's not start adding things.
That's
Maybe
fine.
2019.
Maybe. But
anyway.
So I watched that.
Right.
And then I haven't really watched any extensive things, but San Diego Comic-Con was this week.
Right.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. The trailers that I just watched tonight, because I've been working all weekend and I didn't get a chance to see them. Okay. It's fine. We're only at 28 minutes.
I'm not worried about length. I'm worried about I have to be up early.
I know.
Okay.
We're going to finish this up soon.
Okay.
45 minutes is what I'm going to say.
Bearing in mind, we still have to talk about Ocean's 8 and the first 3 Harry Potter movies.
I know. There's not a lot I have to say about Ocean's 8 and Harry Potter, since I'm not going to summarize.
All right, go ahead.
So, the few trailers that have come out for San Diego Comic-Con have been a lot of DC stuff. And
when will they stop?
Never. But it's okay.
Why won't they
stop? Well, this is the thing. So, one of the movies that had the trailer come out was for the movie Shazam, which you don't have any idea about that, or basis for it, rather. But in the DC comic book universe, there's a little kid, Billy Batson. He gets beat up a lot and whatnot. And they've sort of altered it for the movie, I think. I'm not 100% sure on the character myself. I just know he's given this power that anytime he says the word Shazam, lightning comes down from the sky and makes him into a superhero.
Okay.
And anytime he says... I'm pretty sure anytime he says it again, it just undoes it and makes him a 12-year-old Billy Batson again.
Okay.
It's either he says Shazam and that happens, or he says it backwards or something. Some comic book type thing. Yeah. But the word Shazam, in the movie, it's the name of some wizard that's given him this power. But I believe in the comic books, each letter of the word Shazam stands for a god.
Okay.
So he's endowed with that power of each of those gods, I think.
Okay.
I'm like 95% sure. So in the movie, same thing. He's getting beat up at school. He has this foster brother that, sticks up for him and whatnot. And then he's running away from these bullies. He's beat the shit out of them, got the upper hand somehow, and is on the subway home. And then it just starts freaking out, and he shows up in this weird realm where it's like, Billy Batson, I have chosen you. I need you to say my name, Shazam, or something like that. And he's like, that's weird. And he's like, just do it. And he's like, all right, Shazam. And then the lightning hits, and he turns into this adult male in this red suit with this lightning bolt on his chest. And he now has this power. But the cool thing, for DC at least, is that he still has the mind of a 12-year-old boy. So he has these abilities, and he's like, holy fuck, I'm like... Well, he doesn't say that.
Because he's 12.
Because he's 12. But since this takes place in the DC universe, he's like, his idols are like Superman and Batman, and he sees their names in newspapers and things, and so he looks up to them, and now he's a superhero, but has no idea how to be a superhero. So his buddy, who is way more into superheroes, trains him, and there's this whole scene about let's see what you can do, and they try a fly test, and he goes up halfway and then just comes crashing back down. And they show up at a convenience store at one point, and then the convenience store, conveniently, is being robbed, and he's still learning about his powers, and they shoot him, and the bullets just fly off his chest because he's bulletproof, and he's freaking out, this is amazing, and then he's like, you're dead. And then he goes and beats up the criminals and ties them up and then throws them out the window, and then it looks really fun for a DC movie, and it's probably going to be sad somewhere in the middle of it, as they tend to be. But having the fact that it's a 12-year-old boy's mind inside an adult superhero's body makes it fun. If all of the superheroes could be like that,
yeah,
it would bring a lot less darkness to the movie. But I think Shazam is going to be a lot of fun, and I would like you to watch the trailer at some point. But I know since it's DC, you really don't have any interest in it. The other DC trailer I've seen is for the Aquaman standalone movie, which is a weird concept, but,
Is he just hanging out with fish?
More or less. But it actually looks really good. It looks like it's way more action-packed than, Man of Steel was.
Well, it'd be hard to be less.
Kind of Wonder Woman as well. Wonder Woman takes place during, World War II.
Right,
and then
so the action
Ares shows up,
yeah. Which
I have a problem with. But looking aside from that, so, same sort of deal with Aquaman. His parents, his adoptive parents, are, explaining to him that he's special and things like that. And he's, on a field trip at this aquarium, and he gets picked on and bullied and, thrown into the side of the aquarium. And then this fucking shark... No, this shark comes out and, beats on the glass and, causes a huge crack in it. And then everyone's freaking out. And then Aquaman's just, holding his hand up to the shark, controlling him. And, everyone's like, what the fuck is happening? And, it takes place over the course of Aquaman's life. There are flashbacks to him growing up where he's training because apparently he's supposed to be the king of the seven seas. so he can control fish and everything. And then Aquaman's biggest bad guy is Black Manta, which I know nothing about. I just know his look is like this. He almost looks like a scuba diver with his big globe head with big eyes and shit. So I'm not sure if he's part fish or something. But he exists in like the deepest, darkest depths of the ocean. So that's what he can control. He can control those weird, grisly creatures that exist below that line. And Aquaman can control fish as well,
else.
Pretty much. But there's this huge point where like both sides are fighting, like good fish and bad fish, which it sounds ridiculous, but in the trailer,
so stupid.
In the trailer, it plays so well. Like they're coming together, and there's this huge battle in the ocean, and like people are like riding sharks because there's this whole underwater world. And this goes back to a conversation we were having a while ago about like where the next universe would be. Right. Like we've done space, but like nobody's really done underwater, and like the way it looks like Wakanda underwater. Wakanda water, yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking just now when I said that. But like, yeah. But they, the way their universe is built underwater, and like the way the fish are controlled, and like people riding sharks and shit, like it looks pretty cool. And the whole story about how he has to become like the king of the sea and things like that. It's almost Star Wars like, but just underwater. And I think it's going to be a really cool movie. Something a little more interesting than a lot of the other DC movies.
Be hard to be less.
Shut up.
Is Jason Momoa shirtless for most of it?
Not most of it.
Disappointing.
He looks like Maui.
Okay.
I'm just saying. And he doesn't need to be shirtless.
Alright. Says you.
Alright, whatever. That's stupid.
Have I ruined it for you?
No, you haven't. It's just a dumb reason to go see a movie. Is because he's shirtless.
I don't want to see it for any other reason.
You don't want to see it at all.
Bitey fish.
If you want to see other people shirtless, watch Magic Mike.
Been there, done that.
The sequel.
No interest. Too much.
It's the same thing.
Once was enough.
Alright, so you're telling me it's not enough to carry on a story.
Correct.
Okay. So then why go see the movie at all?
Once. You know what? It doesn't matter. I don't find Jason Momoa particularly attractive. I just know that a lot of people do, and I thought that might be a good way to get you to stop talking about Fish Wars. So
no, because it's actually a decent movie.
A DC movie? Yikes.
Look, I already said I was done with DC movies, so the fact that the Shazam trailer alone is enough to make me like, that's interesting. Of course, even not being on the DC train for movies going forward after the whole Joker thing, I was going to still see DC movies, just not opening day. Shazam is a movie I would consider seeing opening day because of how fun it looks. For a DC movie, that's hard.
Fun for a DC movie is not the same thing as fun.
Fun, because DC movies aren't fun, is what I'm saying. Okay. The other DC trailer I've seen is for the new show Teen Titans, which isn't called Teen Titans, it's just called Titans, and it's going to be on the DC streaming service, which is, it's just Batman with children, and it looks as brutal as the Netflix Daredevil show, but with kids. And like at one point, the criminal's like, "Where's Batman?" expecting there to be Batman, followed by, because Robin shows up, and then Robin destroys everyone, stepping on necks and like blood splattering, and then he's like, "Fuck Batman," and like kills the dude, and it's like really brutal. It's just so bizarre.
With a t-shirt that says "Fuck Batman," with a Robin logo. Yeah,
I'm sure there will be, if there aren't already, because it's just all over the internet. It looks interesting. It is exactly what I said. Daredevil, Netflix Daredevil with Batman. But it's cool that they're kids. Sure. So it makes it a little more ridiculous. And then I saw the Godzilla trailer. It's just Godzilla. And the whole premise is like the world's people are going to be extinct and the world's going to end because of all these other monsters that are going to come out of the woodworks. And the only person, thing, etc. that we have at our disposal that will fight off these monsters is Godzilla. And like that's super cool to have humans on the side of Godzilla, and like these monsters are gonna fight and like we're gonna be saved and it's gonna be amazing. It's just a huge monster movie that they're fighting each other, and I'm all in for that.
Opening day, baby, you and me. No,
it's okay. I'll see that one by myself.
10-4.
But that's it for the trailers that I've seen. I could keep going on about them, but you're giving me that look like we gotta wrap this up. I know you have to wake up early tomorrow, which I totally understand.
So Ocean's 8.
Ocean's 8. So it's Ocean's 11, but with 8 instead, and they're all women. It was a great movie, though.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
A lot of the cast is great.
I realized that I typically am not super interested in heist movies because it's a bunch of men with indistinguishable faces and drives, so there's not really much to latch onto for me anyway. I know that, realistically they're all
heist movies are fun. No, they're not.
Okay.
Heist movies are fun, but they are a lot of the same plot. Typically there's like the one dude that's bringing everyone together.
I can never separate the dudes.
I know. His sidekick that's like right-hand man, and then they're recruiting people, and then there's like the one dude that's like, I've been out of the game for so long.
Right.
And then they recruit him for like one last job, and it's going to be a big payoff, and that's what Oceans 11, 12, and 13 were all like.
And 8 kind of was too, except they were all women.
They were all women. And like it starts out almost identical to Oceans 11, where George Clooney is coming out of prison, and they're like, what are you going to do on the outside? And
just
like,
live a quiet life.
Live a quiet life, and then immediately go into doing a job.
They also said like 14 million times. She went like to George Clooney's grave and was like, you better be in there. Like, so he's totally not. And
Danny
that's going to be the end of the next movie.
Right, like all this like, I'm so sorry your brother's dead, and like there's a picture of him conveniently on the table next to them, and like just so many things about your brother being dead.
Right, he's
that
not really
by the
dead.
end of the movie, you're expecting him to show up.
Right.
Be like the 8th person because they only have 7 people in their heist.
For like 3/4 of the movie.
I know.
The completed heist.
Yeah, like
Right, and then Anne Hathaway figures out what's going on.
Who is basically the mark for this movie, because she's gonna be the person that wears the jewelry that they're gonna steal.
Right.
So, like, they orchestrate it so that it's on her neck. But she's not a part of it. She's, like, a celebrity.
Right. She's,
making it possible.
Right.
And then, like, halfway through their heist, she figures it out. And so they have to bring her in on the heist and then complete the heist.
Right.
Like, the movie is exactly what a heist movie is.
Yeah.
But I will say a lot of the characters are a little more distinguishable.
Yeah.
They have a lot of different motives and, like... lifestyles that they live,
and it was clear. It wasn't just like you saw that when they were being collected and then it went away. Like their personalities stayed consistent throughout.
And even with the payoff, because like when they get their money, it goes into funding their lifestyles basically.
Right.
And like there were a few interesting characters.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember any of their names.
Right.
There's like Rihanna, who's like the hacker.
Yeah, she was great.
She was great. The other one who did what was her special skill?
The pickpocket?
Yes, the pickpocket.
Yeah, she was hilarious.
She was amazing.
She was great.
She was probably one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
And then Mindy Kaling from The Office and The Mindy Project. She did the jewelry. She was like an appraiser that was living with her family and didn't want to do that anymore, and she could like cut this super elaborate necklace down in a certain amount of time.
To like other sellable pieces.
Yeah, merchandise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to spoil the plot because I do think people should see it.
Yeah. I would say the one thing we did notice was that the stakes were super low.
Yeah.
For like the entire
movie.
There's always like in heist movies that moment where everything is going wrong and they're gonna end up in jail. And
in Ocean's 11 specifically, like there's a point where like the SWAT team's called, like the dude that's being robbed figures it out and he calls SWAT, and like you think everything's going down, and like you hear on the walkie-talkies, like, fire shot and shit like that. And then the twist at the end is, like, they were the SWAT team. They intercepted the call, and they just walk out with the money, and everything's cool. Like, at least in that moment, you're like, oh shit, there is a problem, and they have to solve it. Every problem that came up in Ocean's 8, they solved in, like,
within, like, 30 seconds, yeah. There was no...
And, I mean, I know they're just acting, and, like, it's a script, and it's written this way, but in some respect, it's like, these women had it figured out.
Yeah, and I mean, they did... One of the things that I mentioned to you after we saw the movie was, like, they mentioned offhand, like, when... Debbie, was that her name? Sandra Bullock?
Sandra Bullock.
When Sandra Bullock was gathering her team,
Debbie
she was
Ocean.
like, I only want women because women are invisible.
Yeah.
And I wanted that to come up a little bit more.
Part.
Like, I was sort of torn between wanting it to just not be a thing, that they were all women. Like, for it to just never come up. And then wanting it to be, you know, using the patriarchal paradigm to fuck with them.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they could have. There were a lot of moments they could have used it.
And they didn't
fully utilize it.
Whatever.
And then James Corden shows up.
The only man of any note in the movie.
Right.
But
like,
that was fine.
Is a great, like, he's a great person. Like, everything
Yeah.
I've seen about him has been good. But he's like the insurance collector. So he's not
he's not a cop.
He's not a cop. He doesn't care about who took it.
He says that over and over and over again. I can't take you to jail. I have no interest in who took it.
Yeah.
I just want to find it.
Right. Like, I need to know because it's worth a lot.
Right.
And I think that was amazing. Like, the whole movie was pretty great. And, like, they came to the point where, like, the heist was complete. And I was like, that was an okay movie. And then, like, the movie kept going, and I was like, where is it going?
Yeah.
But then James Corden came in, and I was like, this movie is actually pretty great. Like,
it was enjoyable.
It was definitely enjoyable, definitely watchable.
Yeah.
I'd like to rewatch it at some point, not go see it again in the theater, but I would definitely like to watch it again because it was fun.
Yeah.
And I watched Ocean's 11 and 12 like a million times because I do enjoy those movies. You love a heist. I do love a heist, and like, you have George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon. Like, the only one missing was Ben Affleck. You know. Don Cheadle, Bernie Mac before he died.
Not after?
No. But they do have two characters from the Oceans 11, 12, and 13 universe show up in this movie, which was kind of cool. Other than, like, George Clooney's photo. Right. Which I guess maybe he wasn't available, or maybe they just didn't want to use him because he's the face of that franchise.
Right. I would assume he's also pretty pricey.
Yeah. But, I mean, you know.
Hopefully they paid those women comparably. Hopefully. Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear if they didn't.
Yeah. So that was the movie we saw in theaters.
Yeah.
And then we've been starting the movie process
Our
of
Harry Potter project.
Harry Potter.
And we sort of, or I suggested and we sort of decided that the way we're going to talk about it on here is 1 through 3, and then 4 through 6, and then 7 and 8. Right. So we watched 1 through 3.
Yeah. That's where we are right now. We started 4 because it's been a while since, So, just as a preface to this. A preface.
Why didn't I do me?
I'm not going to summarize the movies because I've been told...
Because who the fuck doesn't know what happens?
Right. That's also true. The thing about Jurassic World is I just love that movie. That's why I summarize it so much.
So I'll leave you alone with Jurassic World.
No, it's just... It's part of my childhood. Anyway.
Harry Potter's part of mine. We're not summarizing it.
You would love to do a Harry Potter book podcast.
I'm not summarizing the books. Anyway.
You're not a true fan. So anyways, we watched 1, 2, and 3, and like the movies were how I came into the Harry Potter universe mostly. I read the first book, but then the movies started coming out so quickly, and the books became more daunting that I just kept with the movies, and the video games as well. But we've talked about my passion for Potter,
right?
And same with yours,
right?
But now we're going through the movies to compare them to the books,
right?
And like the first 2 movies, Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone was the version we watched.
Not that it affects the story.
It doesn't.
Any way.
They literally just film scenes with them saying,
yeah.
But that's just Americans for you,
right? Would not have responded to Philosopher as well.
The reason was they thought it would be like seen as a textbook.
Right.
Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which is just
does
dumb.
not sound like a textbook.
It
also,
seems
it
like a
didn't
little dig
look like
for
a textbook.
Americans. Like, that's how stupid
We
they
were
think
too
we
dumb
are.
to handle
Yeah,
it.
I know. But so we watched that, Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban.
Right.
The first two play a lot like the books.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
way more
very
manageable.
similar movies.
In
they
tone.
they were directed by Chris Columbus, both of them. And it shows that like tonally they follow each other pretty well.
Yeah, visually a lot of the same compositions of shots and like with the younger movies, like it doesn't matter so much, but it would have been cool if that consistency had kept up.
Yeah.
So that like this part that is reminiscent of their first year, like we could have composed that shot the same way, but which
we do see down the line.
Down the line, a little bit.
Way down the line, because Chris Columbus also does the last two.
Yeah, which shows too.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I try so hard to be objective with these movies. I did not the first time that I watched the first 4 of them. I think I was still young enough to be like, it's not exactly like the book, I hate it. But 5 forward, I tried.
Oh, so you're not like that?
I'm not. Like, I tried really hard.
Dude.
To...
Okay, pause. But we watched Goblet of Fire a few days ago, and that's all you were doing.
Okay. I do.
I understand.
I do want it to be exactly like the book. I know
for
rationally that it can't. And I try really hard for most of my criticisms to not be like, well, I saw it this way in my head. Because that cannot be replicated. The only, you know what, we'll talk about that when we get to 4. The things that I have problems with, a lot of them I can objectively say I know that was changed because the way it is in the book would not play cinematically. I can't think of specific examples, but there have been so many like little moments that had to get like blown up so that it made sense on screen.
That it either made sense or took up time in some cases, as we'll get, like, that happens way more in a lot of the later movies. Like in the first 2 movies, they flow pretty well. Yeah. They get the story across. They do a good job at telling the story of Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah.
There are some details that get lost.
Things are swapped around and muddied, but, you know, there has to be a through line to tell that story. You can't tell what are they, like 300 pages?
About.
A 300-page story in 2 hours. It gets more difficult as the books get longer.
Right.
But.
And the other challenge being that when the first 2 movies came out, not all of the books had been released.
Which, it's just insane to me from an artistic standpoint that any director in the world would be like, yeah, let's do it. We don't know where any of this is going, but we feel confident choosing what through lines we're going to follow.
And things like that. And that was very apparent to me in the video games because they have to tell the story that exists, but again, they don't know what's going to be important. So there are like lines that they chose to leave in that don't have any bearing on anything later on because they chose not to use it. And then because the movies were also coming out, it goes from being just like a very animated book type style to very like, that's Daniel Radcliffe's likeness and like we're gonna stick to the movie. And even some of the video games came out before the movie was released, so they didn't want people playing through the game and having it be spoiled, so they wouldn't go see the movie. So there are things that they like don't touch on a lot or like leave out specifically for the games. But the biggest problem I think you had is with book 3, movie 3.
Well, I was gonna just wrap up with the first 2.
Sorry, yeah.
They flow pretty well. You get the gist of it. One of the things that I loved from the first book that did not make it into the movie, with the sequence at the end where they're trying to get to the Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah.
My favorite of those challenges was when they had the room with all the potions.
Yeah.
Because it was so cool. It was, this piece of paper with the instructions and these bottles, and Hermione's like logicking her way through it. And I'm like, my entire life I've been going, why the fuck wouldn't they have put that in there? Because it's so cool. It's so fascinating. But then I'm sitting there thinking, what is happening visually? Nothing.
Right.
The two of them, she's reading a piece of paper, and then they drink from a bottle.
It is pretty anticlimactic versus what they chose, which is the chess.
Yeah, and
like
chess
the
is
chess
the
challenge.
giant chess is so much more cinematic.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I wish was in that got cut. Like, Nearly Headless Nick's Death Day party doesn't make it in.
Like,
because
that
it
would've
does
been cool.
nothing for the plot, but it's so cool.
I think there are some deleted scenes with Nearly Headless Nick. I don't think they do the Death Day party. I would have seen more shit online, like Tumblr stuff. But I do think it might have played better if a lot of the challenges at the end were super cinematic, like the chess set was, and then the three kids get to the last one, and it is just 3 potions and a piece of paper, and it's like, this is it?
2 of them, and there's way more bottles.
Whatever, you know what I mean. I'm thinking of it based on another pop culture thing. That's
alright, it's an edge of a correction for you.
That's not our show or our term. You can't use it. We're gonna get sued for that and the song that played at the beginning of this.
Whatever.
But I think it might have been more of a gag then.
Yeah.
To have it,
but I wouldn't have wanted it to be a gag.
Yeah. I know, and that's the problem.
Yeah. So the first 2, tonally, passable, watchable. They felt like Harry Potter. Then we get to the third one, which is the first one to have a different director. And it shows immediately.
Immediately, yeah.
There is a scene at the beginning of Prisoner of Azkaban that Tumblr will never be able to let go because he's doing his homework under his covers and he says Lumos and lights his wand. And he would have gotten pulled into the ministry for, like, disciplinary action if he had used magic outside of school, because that's not allowed, and we just had a whole thing in the second movie about that, and there's a scene later on in the third one where he gets apprehended for doing magic underage. But so there's that.
It doesn't seem apprehended.
Well, no, because he's Harry Potter. But
well, no, it seems like he happens to be, I can't remember how it plays, but it's like he calls the night bus and shows up at the Leaky Cauldron. And then what happens? Then he gets taken by the minister? Like, I can't remember. So he blows up his aunt, who does not fly off into the countryside, but whatever, more cinematic. It's funnier, I also think. But I do think that director, there are a lot more jokes in this movie than in the previous.
Which is weird. So he blows up his aunt, and then he gets an owl from the ministry that's like, you can't be doing that. So then he leaves. He's like, they're going to take me to Azkaban. I can't do it.
Well, that's in the book.
Yeah.
I'm saying in the movie.
Oh.
How does
I thought you were asking what actually happened.
No, I know what actually happens.
Okay. So in the movie, he just fucks off and gets on the night bus, gets to the Leaky Cauldron where the minister meets him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he must have been tipped off that Harry Potter was there or something. I mean, I'm sure there is some part of the ministry that has like a Harry Potter tracker team, like that is
Potter
just
Force One.
Yeah, like good job.
Thank you.
That literally all this funding is going into where is this kid in the world for at least these 8 years, or 7 years. Sorry,
right.
The 8th book movie thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and the third book gets a little bigger.
Yeah.
Not overwhelming.
Right.
But they're still trying to do a lot of things.
But my point was going to be, because they do talk about, like, we're not going to send you to Azkaban for blowing up your aunt.
Right.
Like, if they're not even going to mention that, like...
that was only because of the Sirius Black thing.
Right. So, like, the Lumos thing...
It's not even mentioned.
Yeah, because it's not even that important.
It's so important. It's like, it's the opening scene of the movie.
No, I know that, but I'm saying, like, if they're willing to dismiss the blowing up the ant thing, like, the levels of those things are too...
Not even from a disciplinary standpoint. At this point, Harry has been disciplined for using magic outside of school. He never would have done it again. The blowing up his aunt was involuntary. Saying Lumos, that is intentional.
Right.
He would not have done that.
Why wouldn't he have?
Because he's already been disciplined in the last book.
Yeah, but he's Harry fucking Potter.
He's so scared when he blows up Marge that he's going to get sent to jail.
But Daniel Radcliffe isn't. And that's the thing. This is also the thing. I would also say Daniel Radcliffe's Harry Potter is a little smarter than the Harry Potter in the books.
It'd be hard to be dumber.
Right.
Harry Potter's an idiot.
But that's my point, is it's almost a different version of Harry Potter, like an alternate universe.
And that's
whereas why Snape and Alan Rickman, those lines get blurred, because nobody should be on Snape's side, but we are because of Alan Rickman.
Don't say we.
I know. I mean, we as a collective.
You and the rest of the
I'm not.
movie watching
I
world.
am not. I am adamantly opposed to Snape as a character. I love Alan Rickman's Snape. That's a different Snape.
And that's the problem that we start seeing much more in the third movie forward, is that they are telling a different story. Mm-hmm. And that it ties into my biggest problem with the third movie, is that the Marauders are fucking almost completely erased. The Marauders' storyline and their existence in that world, Prisoner of Azkaban is one of my favorite books. Yeah. It is my favorite of the Harry Potter books. Because we get so much background, and everything that Harry learns about his parents, he has so much pride in that, and it shapes who he is as a person.
Right.
And the movie took almost all of that away. And so then you start to wonder, how could he possibly become the same character if he doesn't have this background information?
Right.
He can't. So yeah, you start seeing that divergence, and he doesn't,
right.
and it sucks.
I know, and that is the problem when you adapt something that exists into. What the hell is that?
I think it's one of the things from the bottom of the chair.
Oh, okay. Sorry. When you adapt an ongoing series into film, like, obviously a lot of the things get muddled, but when you're telling a story on screen, you stick with one character. Mm-hmm. And it's very much Harry Potter's story. Right. So the Marauders don't matter. Like, to some degree, his parents don't matter. Like, they're always, like, afterthoughts or just blurbs mentioned in the background. And then we see how Harry Potter's like, oh, my mom and dad are good and all this other shit. But only for a little bit of the time. Like, right. a lot of the Harry Potter story is about love defeating evil, more or less. Like, mm-hmm. I mean, even in the fourth, when he's faced with Voldemort, like, his parents and all that shit, like, that's a big part of it. Him seeing his parents in the Mira Rivera said in the first movie. It's immensely important to him. His mother's eyes apparently is a part of the plot. But I'm saying,
not the plot, but it's nice.
It's a part of a plot because it connects him to his mother. It's part
of his development.
No. His eyes being reminiscent of his mother's ties into Snape's story, which is part of the plot.
I don't consider that part of the plot.
It is, though, because there's more than one plot going on.
It's a subplot.
But it's a big subplot. It's supposed to be a big subplot.
Right.
But it's
out of fucking nowhere at the
I know.
11th hour.
I know. I'm just thinking of it as a world that does exist beyond the books, which isn't something you generally do.
Right.
There are a lot of stories being told that don't get told on screen because we were like, Daniel Radcliffe is the star.
Right.
He's the story we're going to focus on. Everything else, we're going to work around him.
Right. And the problem that we mentioned earlier, all the books weren't out.
Yeah.
And there was not a basis for a series like this that existed. No. So they could not have possibly known that it was going to just expand exponentially and that every single detail was going to end up being just vitally important down the line.
And,
so the stuff that they chose to focus on, like, great. Yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban is sort of a coherent movie. I still feel like I get whiplash when I watch those movies because they're trying to do so many things.
It does start the trend of, jumping around and cutting, like not cutting enough. Right. And with Goblet of Fire, as we'll talk about more later on.
Right.
That one was super jumpy, that it like cherry-picked plots and then didn't follow up on half of them.
Right. They tried to do everything without doing anything thoroughly. Exactly.
They fuck themselves up. Prisoner of Azkaban it does play like if you don't try to think about it too much, the plot it's pretty linear and makes sense. It's not the plot that Prisoner of Azkaban, the book, gives us. There are a lot of cool things that are cut. Even the relationship between Harry and Lupin.
Yeah, it gets cut to almost nothing.
Yeah, and then Harry and Sirius, which, the movies do try to, tug at your heartstrings because there are sad things that happen in the books, but they're not developed enough to be as impactful as they were in the books.
Right, and like the whole scene in the Shrieking Shack in Prisoner of Azkaban where Sirius and Lupin are sort of co-explaining exactly what the fuck happened and who they are and how they related to Harry's father. And like, that was cut down to almost nothing. Yeah. And
this was a thing that came up when I was in film school a lot, and it obviously stands to reason because you are watching a movie, but the show and not tell, it's very hard to... there in these particular movies, there's a lot of exposition that needs told, and people that are making these films will try not to do that because they are supposed to be showing and not telling. But I do think movie book adaptations should be an exception to that rule.
Yeah.
Because, I watch Kevin Smith movies and they're all dialogue. Like, there's very little showing and not telling. But it works in some level, and for trying to make Harry Potter movies accessible to the widest possible audience instead of the people that have read the books and grew up with the characters wanting to see those on screen. I get it from a business standpoint, but from a creative standpoint, you're fucking yourself over because you're not, like we said with Goblet of Fire, you're not focusing on one thing, you're cutting out too much, and it just doesn't make for an interesting movie.
Right, and we've talked about this a lot. I don't know if we ever talked about it on the podcast, but like at some point down the line, they are going to do like, we call them revivals on Broadway. I don't know what you call it.
Remakes.
A remake.
Well, pretty steadily and consistently call it a remake.
Okay, they're going to do a remake of these movies, and it would be super cool if there was one director who could look at all of the source material and cut and, finagle things around to make a linear story out of the movies, a coherent story out of the movies.
Because the source material exists, we're not waiting for new things to come out. The only problem that I've thought about this a lot since we've discussed that, because that would be amazing if there were 8, or if they could do it in 7.
Make it episodic. Do a Netflix series. It
could be a Netflix series.
Because the books are so long. Trying to make any of them into a reasonably, long movie.
And I think it might have been on a Kevin Smith podcast. They talked about doing, almost like a it was very ridiculous. It was like a Disney Channel high school version of Hogwarts where they could do episodes of it, but since it was Disney, it wasn't as dark and stuff as it gets. But you could totally do like a Netflix original series, like a Harry Potter series with one director that has a consistent feel to it. Or if it was like, The Flash, where they have a bunch of different directors come in, but they have like a formula to how they do it. That way they can tell a cohesive story.
Right.
The problem I see with it ever being remade is in J.K. Rowling's lifetime. She would have to be heavily involved. And I think because of her actions on Twitter, telling us more backstory, that would be her trying to work that into canon. So you would still have, what exists, but she would try to change some things to revive it, sort of like George Lucas does with Star Wars movies, so she can keep telling her version of the story even after she's not relevant anymore.
That frustrates me so much. I know we've talked about it before, but I'm wholeheartly on John Green's side with this, which when people ask him, well, what happens to Hazel after the end of The Fault in Our Stars, he's like, I don't know.
I know. We've had this conversation before.
I know. Death of the author. just because she imagined it a certain way doesn't mean that's the truth. And I hate that she keeps injecting stuff, trying to force it in, because the books, like, people who read books in their childhood, I mean, it's like it's almost violent, just the love and the obsession, because it's so different when you fall into something when you're young, because you're able to just invest so much more in it emotionally, and that's why I have such a problem with the movies, and I'm just not able to be objective,
because they're
I am so
core part of you.
Like, I'm so passionate about those books. I love them so hard. Like,
they're your phoenix feather.
All right.
They exist within your core as a human being. They've shaped you into who you are as a person.
Oh, you thought that out.
Yeah, I did.
Well
it
done.
wasn't just a
Well
thought.
done. All right.
Thank
What
you.
the fuck does that have to do with anything? Sure. All right, we'll keep talking about my painful experience with the Harry Potter movies.
I know. We're going to wrap this up. I do want to say, though, that if J.K. Rowling does ever pass on, I mean, she might not. She might live forever.
Crossed. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know what would happen to the rights. I don't know. Does she have kids?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it'll probably stay within the family for as long as she can possibly make it.
We'll find out if her children are insufferable.
If she has a clause that says, once I die, no more Harry Potter things can be released. And I don't know, because you also have Warner Brothers probably has the movie rights to it.
Right.
But Warner Brothers sucks
at
making movies, as we have seen time and time again with the DC shit.
Right. And now there's a Broadway play, like
The Cursed Child. The Cursed Child. The Cursed Child. I call it
don't complicate it.
It's complicated.
It's a mess, is what it is.
But I still have yet to read that.
It's not necessary.
I think I do need to read it, though, just as a person who loves Harry Potter, that I need to be disappointed by it.
Don't buy it.
I won't. Okay. Don't you have it?
No. I borrowed somebody else's copy.
Well,
because I was
maybe we'll
skeptical.
Take it from the library.
Perfect.
Maybe. I don't know.
It's bad.
But
it's so bad.
I know. But even though, I grew up with the movies, I still luckily have that childlike wonder in my soul that, like, hearing Jim Dale read the books brought up, like, all those emotions, and I was able to enjoy it. Like, I probably would have enjoyed it as a kid who had trouble reading.
You're a fairly childlike viewer of material anyway. So, like,
I don't like to be super critical. Like, I can be objective and say, like, this is bad and this is good.
Right,
and
but
things
you
like that.
love with your whole heart, like kids do.
I try to, because, like, that's what makes things enjoyable. I don't
Right.
love to hate things, and I want to be as open-minded as possible and open to things.
Yeah, and I mean, same, but I don't think nothing that I've read since Harry Potter has elicited that same feeling, and I think a lot of that is because I was so young when I read it.
And there'll never be anything like that. Even for kids that are growing up with books now, Harry Potter is still going to be their Harry Potter.
There will be things that they love violently,
yes,
but it won't be the cultural phenomenon.
I don't think to the level of Harry Potter.
I don't know. I loved a lot of stuff pretty intensely when I was younger.
Like, I'm not saying that but with Harry Potter, you grew up with him, and, like, the books themselves were pretty intricate, and, like, the world that was created, like I was saying with, like, we've done space and we've been on Earth,
right.
Like, there's no other world you can replicate in any sort of way that I don't think there'll definitely not be another series like it.
Not in our lifetime.
Not in our lifetime, and I don't think movie-wise there could be without that solid foundation. But even for kids growing up with books, I think the people that loved Harry Potter growing up, they're going to pass it down to their kids, and that's going to be their Harry Potter. Like, Harry Potter is going to stand the tests of time. People are going to be doing, like, what we do with Shakespeare and shit in school, because it is such a keystone of pop culture and, like, just...
Yeah, I mean, there have been books and even series that have come in and out of vogue over the years.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Harry Potter, the world just keeps expanding because nobody can let it go.
Like, every anniversary, No, but I know, it's always... There's always going to be Harry Potter books being released, new, revived, like, illustrated books.
27th editions.
Yeah, like, it's not going to go anywhere.
And they're going to continue being movies for as long as Warner Brothers can keep milking money out of it.
Yeah. But I imagine at a certain point, there's a time on those rights where, like what happened with the Fantastic Four, where they're going to start losing time before they have to make a new Harry Potter movie to keep those rights. Well, which might be what Fantastic Beasts is. And
I was going to say the money milking might be about to come to a screeching halt with the decision to keep Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Like, I don't...
That's the other trailer I didn't get to watch, was The Crimes of Grindelwald was released over the weekend.
Yeah, I'm real nervous about it.
Yeah. I don't know why they need to focus on him, even though, like, I know it's rooted in the Harry Potter lore.
Anyway.
I know. That's a whole nother thing. But
alright, that was 1 through 3.
Yeah, we'll do 4, 5, and 6 later on. 6 was my favorite book, but I know the movie doesn't stand up to it, and I've seen it, like,
it's the worst
twice.
One.
The later we go on in these movies, the less I've seen them.
Yeah. The less
I've rewatched them. Yeah, like 1 and 2, I've seen so many times, like, because they're very, very
ABC
magical.
Family every Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
But we'll get to all that fun stuff later on. So
yes. Thanks for listening.
I've been your host, Matthew the Dr. Danko.
I'm Hillary Crum.
Yes, my lovely, lovely co-host. Thanks for doing this podcast with me with minimal eye rolling.
Anytime, dear.
Love you.
Love you.
Once the show ends, please don't shed those tears. We'll come back again, so have no fear. Oh, we told you that it just might end up this way. What's the show called again? You cannot be saying, why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me now? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me?